Yeah, I know exactly what to go on. Mature HIV particles reveal extensive glycan shedding, ectodermine tilting, and structural variation. Okay, so, okay. So, here we are. Okay. Alright. So, basically, we're working on myeloid cells today, and what we've concluded is they hide in the cells they hide in the cells, and in doing so, if we go off antiretrovirals, they come out of the cell and start another replication within the body. So we're looking at this, and we're thinking, how do we get medicine into the cell? Or how do we get medicine to those areas to kill the HIV? So we're gonna go do research on what's going on. Okay. Here's gonna be big news. Okay, so I'm gonna go into. I really don't want to end this. I'll just put this in. Let's see what's going on. Okay. A homogeneous 32 mutation in the CCR5 gene prevents CCR5 cell surface expression and thus confers resistance to infected CCR5 tropic HIV strains. Images. Okay. CCR gene. CC. Origins of the CCR delta 32 mutation. The transmembrane CCR chemotype receptor is used by HIV strains to enter cells of the immune system, which as macrophages and CD4 plus T cells and CD2 deletion prevents expression of the receptor on the cell surface and provides almost complete resistance to HIV-1 infection in homogeneous individuals and partial resistance in heterohomogeneous state. The average occurrence of the CCR5 delta 32 deletion ETA is estimated to be 10% in Caucasian European inhabitants, but is almost absent among sub-Saharan African, Asian, and American Indian populations. Thesis: the origin of CCR5 delta 32 is the reason why only such selected groups of Europeans carry this mutation has now been a topic of discussion. When it was first discovered, scientists believed that the bubonic plague, also known as Black Death, was the answer to the mutation. Recent studies have suggested that mutations have been present since before the bubonic plague, being the Black Death only part of the history behind the origin of CCR5 delta 32. Previous theory 1, a single pandemic of the Black Death, which killed about 40% of the population. Theory 2, epidemic of bubonic plague every 10 years for 400 years. Theory 3, smallpox epidemic every 5 years in Europe for at least 620 years from 1347 to 1970. Theory 1, a single pandemic of the Black Death, which killed about 40% of the population in Europe. The theory is perhaps the most popular, but studies have demonstrated that the mutation did not result from a single disease streak, but from several reoccurrences over several centuries. 32. Epidemics of the bubonic plague every 10 years. I am going back there. Epidemics of the bubonic plague every 10 years for 400 years. Scientific modeling shows that this hypothesis is not effective. It has been shown that Yersinia the bacteria pathogen of bubonic plague does not use the CCR5 receptor for entry. Smallpox epidemic every 5 years in Europe for at least 620 years, from 1347 to 1970. This proposition is not valid. A lethal form of smallpox appeared in England only in 1628. Total annual smallpox deaths in London did not rise consistently beyond 1,000 before 1710. Consequently, smallpox could have acted successfully only during the period of 1700 to 1830. However, scientific modeling indicates that over 600 years of epidemics would be required to raise the frequency to 10%. New findings. New scientific studies have concluded that CCR5 Delta 32 appeared over 2,500 years ago. This suggested that its incidence was forced up to from the initial single mutation to the frequency in the mid-14th century by erratic epidemics and homozotic outbreaks, which occurred extensively over the eastern Mediterranean area during a very long time period. A new report claims to have detected CCR532 mutation allele in 4 of 17 Bronze Age skeletons during about the 900 BC from a burial site in the central Germany, which findings suggest that hemorrhagic plague, in addition to the major historic outbreaks, may have been grumbling along the Eastern Europe from 1000 BC. These new findings reinforce the new proposition of the existence of the mutation over 2,500 years ago. As mentioned before, instances of these epidemics before the arrival of the Black Death consist of the following. I don't know if you know what it was 3,000 years ago that Jesus walked Earth, and now it's not. Hemorrhagic fevers as mentioned above, instances of these epidemics before the arrival of Black Death consists of the following: hemorrhagic fevers in the Nile Valley of the Pharaonic Egypt, 1500 to 1350 B. Hemorrhagic fevers in Mesopotamia, 700 to 450 B. About 250 B. Plague of Athens, 400 to 427 BC. Plague of Justinian originated in Ethiopia, moved down to the Nile Valley and onward to Syria AD 541, and hence to Asia Minor, Africa, and Europe, arriving in Constantinople in AD 50, where the plague of the early Islamic is prior AD 627 to 704. Conclusion: what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, literally. It is believed that the original mutation of CCR5 Delta 32 appeared over 2,500 years ago and has persisted epidemics of the hemorrhagic fever that hit the early classical developments assisted to reinforce the frequency at the time of the Black Death, proving that the bubonic plague is not responsible by itself for the mutation. In addition, the incidence of CCR5 Delta 32 is expected to fall slowly by genetic drift over the next 300 years due to advance in prevention of new hemorrhagic diseases. Okay. Now let's go research what life was like 25. What were humans like 2,500 years ago? The majority of the world's population lived and broad bands stretching from Europe to Middle East to India and then up to China. This is the region of organized states, cities, metalworking, and literacy. The Roman Empire and China are two strongest powers, and they are vaguely aware of each other through rumored and legend. The Roman Empire dominates the Mediterranean, ships loads of grain sails regularly from Egypt to Italy. Okay. Celts and Germans. The north of Rome, the lands inhabited by Celts and Germans, classed as barbarians by the Romans. Britons and Ireland are home to dozens of small tribal kingdoms, as are Germany. Scandinavia and East Europe, these people have not yet developed writing, so little is known of them except the new comments by Roman and Greek writers and the material relics uncovered by archaeologists in the Iron Age culture. Okay, so what do what what do people with CCR5 have in common? What do people with gene mutation CCR532 have ancestrally in common? The delta 32 mutation at the CCR5 loop is a well-studied example of natural selection acting in humans. The mutation is found principally in Europe and West Asia, with higher frequencies generally in the north. Homogenized carriers of delta 32 mutation is resistant to HIV-1 infection because the mutation prevents the functional expression of CCR5 chemotype receptor normally used by HIV-1 to enter the CD4 T cells. HIV has emerged only recently, but the population genetic data strongly suggests delta 32 has been under intense selection for much of its evolutionary history. To understand how selection and dispersal have interacted during the history of delta 32 allele, we implemented a spiral explicit model of the spread of delta 32. The model includes the effect of sampling, which is shown give rise to local peaks in observation allele frequencies. In addition, we show that with modest gradients in selection intensity, the origin of delta 32 allele may be relatively far from the current areas of highest allele frequency. The geographic distribution of the delta 32 allele is consistent with the previous reports of the strong selective advantage, 10% for delta 32 carriers of the dispersal over relatively long distances, 100 kilometers generation. When selection is assumed to be uniform across Europe and West Asia, we find support that Northern Europe origin and long-range dispersal consistent with the Viking meditated dispersal of delta 32 proposed by G. Ducat and G. Mercier. However, when we allow for gradients in selection intensify, we estimate the origin to be outside of Northern Europe and selected intensity to be strongest in the Northwest. Our results describe the evolutionary history of delta 32 allele and the establishment of general methodology for studying the geographic distribution of selected alleles. And okay. that Italy? I don't know where. What's going on? Just kidding. Okay. Shaded contour map of a 32 alley frequency data. The sampling located marked by black. The sampling locations are marked by black points. The interpopulation is masked in regions where data are unavailable. Okay. Alright, so we took all these blood samples from all these places and we found that it came from exited there. An example of alley frequency surfaces simulated data. The underlying alley frequency surface generated by PDE models using MLEs for the parameters, the coarseness of the surface and irregular coastlines. God, get away from me. Air layer coastlines are due to the resolution of simulated habitats. To replicate of simulated data obtained using the same sampling and locates the sample size of the database and displays using the same interpopulation methods and contours. The results show the underlying smooth uninominal alley frequency surfaces can give rise to irregular multimodal observed alley frequency surfaces. They probably should have tested Americans to see if any of us have it from our ancestors to better pinpoint the strength. So let's see what Delta 32 CCR5 Delta 32 CCR5 Delta 32 mutation in America population. The CCR5 Delta 32 mutation occurs in 8 to 10% of white people in the United States, but less than 1% of African Americans. The mutation is more common in some racial backgrounds than others. For example, in Northern Ireland, the mutation occurs about 50% in Caucasians, and it occurs in only 10% of African Americans. It occurs about 90% among Asians, and frequency varies from 1 to 12%. CCR5 Delta 32 mutation is a genetic. Okay, so can I test for the CC? I want to go get tested. Yeah. Can they test me for free, or do I have to pay? Are you genetically resistant to HIV? Get tested. Only for $199. I would get tested for CCR5 Delta 33. You get tested for all these. You will get tested for CCR Delta 33 deletion mutation. copies of its genes, and individuals who carry 2 copies of the genetic gene may get smallpox, bubonic plague, and are resistant to HIV virus because they age. Up to 20% of the population only carry 1 copy of the genetic mutation in your background, although they still run a significant risk of contracting HIV progressing of the disease and a greatly reduced. You will get tested for APOS protein production. A small number of people in every 300 affected with HIV, the virus is naturally suppressed without medical treatment due to apoptosis. These people may carry high quantities of protein that disrupt the virus. I want to get tested and see what I got, because you know I'm like the oldest living human being on the planet, so why wouldn't I have this? All that. At all.